If you're unrecognizable and starting over, I mean, that can be detrimental to your business. Getting new signs made is whatever to put new license numbers and things on there. But if you have your branding and stick with it, I mean, that will just help you build your business over time.
Hello and welcome to episode 66 of the Smart Agents Podcast. My name is Michael Walter and I'll be your host. In today's episode, we are joined by California-based agent BryAnn Smith. Just a little over 2 years into her real estate career, BryAnn is using her previous experience in marketing to build a strong personal brand. Throughout our conversation, we talk about the importance of creating a recognizable personal identity, as well as how BryAnn's focus on giving her clients the best possible experience is paving the way for exponential growth. Now, before we get on to the day's featured interview, make sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents Podcast. You can find the show on all major podcasting platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and now Amazon Music. Also, as you can see if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents YouTube channel. Click the bell to get notifications when each new episode is uploaded. And lastly, if you or somebody else on your team has an awesome story or tip to share with our community, send us a message at feedback@smartagents.com. We're always on the lookout for new stories to share. All right, on to the day's featured interview with BryAnn Smith. I've linked her Instagram page and website in the episode description for you to check out. Honestly, really the way I like to get everything started is if you could tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're at in the country and how you got your start in real estate.
Cool. Okay. So I'm BryAnn Smith. I live in the Central Valley of California. So literally smack dab in the middle. Near Fresno is the most known major city. Lemoore is also very close. And we have one of the biggest Navy bases. So we're really known for that also. And that draws a lot of business over here. I was born and raised here, grew up on a farm and a cotton ranch. I moved down to LA for a couple years. And that's where I went to college and studied merchandise marketing at the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising. So originally I wanted to be in fashion, but I did not like LA and I wanted to move back home literally the day I graduated college. So moving back home, there was nothing to do but ag. So I worked in ag for a little bit, but I didn't have that creative aspect I was really looking for. So I started doing some different social media marketing and social media managing, and that led me to doing marketing for a real estate team. And I really enjoyed it and really enjoyed learning about real estate and seeing, the cool and creative aspect to it compared to back in the day where, or at least for me, I would think as real estate agents as door knockers or cold callers showing up in a suit and a briefcase. And I didn't think it was very interesting until I started doing the marketing and until social media became a big factor in that. So worked with them for a little bit. They really wanted me to get my license. They moved to the East Coast. So then that really pushed me to get my license and get started. And I've really honed in on the marketing ever since. And that's what I really tried to use and do to set myself apart compared to a lot of other agents in the area.
All right. So how long have you had your license now?
Just about 2.5 years. So it hasn't been too long, but I did start with a good amount of momentum, especially growing up and doing business in the area that I was raised in. My sphere of influence is pretty strong, but then social media helped a ton too. So I like to use both of those to really keep my momentum up for business and keep those relationships, which is so important.
Right. So you talk about social media and your marketing background and really kind of getting you into real estate. What were some of the things that you kind of at the very beginning started noticing that you could really do in real estate, in that social media marketing?
Yeah, so I didn't see a lot of agents in my area focusing on education. So that was something that I really wanted to focus on highly. For any of my clients, I want them to understand everything from start to finish and not feel like they didn't understand anything or that they had unanswered questions. When I bought my first home, my mother-in-law was our agent and she was fantastic, but I feel like I was just blindly signing things. There wasn't an explanation or a full explanation, I guess, or detailed on everything we were signing, what was going to come next, and things like that. And when you're buying a home, it's a huge deal. And obviously, I fully trusted her, and I would always want any of my clients to fully trust me. but I still want them to be able to understand everything from start to finish, know what's coming next, know what fees they're going to have out of pocket, and not have any surprises. Surprises pop up all the time already, but if I can avoid any of those as much as possible, I would love to do that. And I think it just makes the process a little bit more enjoyable for them, and then a better and hopefully smoother transaction and process from start to finish. So that's what I really focused on social media, was putting out a lot of educational content for both buyers and sellers. And now I've seen like more agents starting to do that too. And I really enjoy that because I think it's important.
Right. Yeah. When you go on your page, I see the videos that you do. It's kind of like the background, like the colored background behind you, the words popping up. And I think those are really great. They're super, they're easy to consume.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a lot of times what people need. You can get really in the weeds and things, and having that really, you're just answering that one question at a time, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it keeps their focus a little better. It's easier for them to rewatch and find the information they need to possibly, and it might stick in their brain a little bit more. And I think that just comes with branding also. So I always try to stick with my branding for marketing, even when it comes to my videos. So if my videos or any of my content shows up anywhere, that hopefully that just instantly brings up myself like in their mind, or my brand, or then possibly down the road, just having that recognition when they're looking to buy or sell.
You're talking about that branding and that personal branding. I think that's really important, that a lot of agents don't quite do as well. Everybody, for the longest time, it was kind of standing behind that big brokerage label, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And now more and more people are starting to create their own personal brands, which in real estate, you are your own personal brand.
Yeah,
you are the person that everybody's working with. Is that something that you really learned through, when you were in school and kind of going through that marketing? Or how did that come about?
A little bit. But then when I was working in ag, and again, I didn't really have anything creative to do. So I started like this little like jewelry business like online, and I started like an Instagram page for it. And I really, really enjoyed the marketing, branding it, and coming up with all that stuff. And so then I stopped really liking doing the jewelry, but really enjoyed doing the marketing. So that's when I started doing some marketing for some other people and got my feet wet with that. I learned a little bit in school, but then I think like I just had like a passion for social media and really enjoy like aesthetics and branding and really sticking with that. I am so nitpicky when it comes to my social media, even with like my marketing agency. I'm like, oh, like the color's like a little bit off. So I'm so detailed with it, but it makes a big difference to me. And I think it makes a big difference like in the long run. So that's why I really enjoy it. And I get comments about it all the time about like branding and knowing as soon as they see like a nude photo that like that's coming from like my page, or like different things like that. So I enjoy it, and I think that it's worth the time and effort that gets put in, and it can make a huge difference. That's been my biggest thing with my brokerage, is they have just let me run with it and brand myself. Compared to branding my brokerage, all I have to do is use their exact font for the brokerage name and put their license number on there, obviously. But other than that, I can do whatever colors I want. I can do signs. I can do whatever branding and marketing, as long as it follows like the legal rules and all that fun stuff. But that's something that made a huge difference to me when choosing my brokerage. And that's why I don't think I'll really hop brokerages. I don't know what could really be better somewhere else. But if I ever do, then at least I branded myself compared to branding a brokerage.
Right. So what was that conversation like? I mean, did you have a conversation with your broker saying, this is really what I want to do and how I want to market myself? Or was it, what was that like? Because I think a lot of times people might be a little afraid to ask those questions.
Yeah. So the real estate team that I was working with before was already at the brokerage that I'm currently at. We were doing like their own marketing, but it still used like a lot of the brokerage colors, but more in like a modern way, but that also really fit their brand. So the only thing I really asked when I came on was like when it came to my signs. But I just kind of like took it and ran with it when it came to my branding and social media. Because my brokerage is a smaller brokerage in our area. It's not a KW or a Century 21 or anything like that. So I wasn't as worried about like using like red and white or like black and gold, which just like is not my vibe. And so that was something that really stood out for me. I didn't have to really sit down and have a full-on conversation about like, can I use this? Can I post that? They were really open to it and have always always been beyond positive about any of my videos and marketing and seeing like how it really works for me. So I've really enjoyed that. But I've also had a lot of agents reach out to me on Instagram asking about like, hey, like my brokerage really isn't liking me doing my own marketing, and some other agents are getting jealous about it and they're giving me pushback, but I really want to brand myself. Like, how do I go about that? And sometimes you can make it work at your brokerage if they're willing to give you that opportunity and see it as worth it for you to stay there. But sometimes you might have to go somewhere else. I think that it is getting to be more common that brokerages are getting to be more open to it and not necessarily sticking with a very strict marketing plan or like media kit and things like that. Mm-hmm. So that's like really interesting to see. And I think it is really important for modern agents to be able to brand themselves and not just brand their brokerage, because nothing's forever and you definitely don't want to have to start over if you ever do change brokerages.
Right, exactly. And I think that's the really important thing is the starting over part, right?
Exactly.
You can build up this huge business, but if it's behind a different label, nobody's going to know you if you move on.
If you're unrecognizable and starting over, I mean, that can be detrimental to your business. Yeah. Getting new signs made is whatever to put new license numbers and things on there. But if you have your branding and stick with it, I mean, that will just help you build your business over time is always my thought.
Right. And hopefully, honestly, if these brokers, they see that, hey, it's working, it's bringing me in money, let it go.
Exactly. Yeah. I think some are a little bit more maybe selfish than others, just really wanting to stick with like the brokerage branding. But I think a lot are opening up to it and things are changing. So it is really interesting to see. But sometimes there's plenty of other agents that don't like marketing and enjoy having to use like their brokerage marketing because it's just handed to them. So I think that just pros and cons for everyone, but if that's important to you, then you need to find a brokerage that really fits your wants and needs and that you can grow with in the future.
Right. So moving on to more of your, the clients you work with and, how you work with clients, what are some of your, are you both, do you really focus on the buyer side of thing or the seller side of thing? Or are you really kind of all in one?
All in one, it's usually pretty 50-50, but then this year, just given the seller's market, I've really tried to manifest and push more listings compared to buyers. I still love working with buyers, but it's been hard, not only for agents, but also for buyers, and it can be a little discouraging. In the Central Valley here, we're starting to see inventory getting a little better and a little bit of a slowdown, so it is getting to be better for buyers. But most of this year, I've really been pushing listings, and I've been marketing that more on social media, just with more like educational content for sellers, and then just also like a lot of market content, just pushing that it's like such a great time to sell, giving out free home valuations, and same with like seller guides and things like that. So that's just kind of been what I've really done this year, given the market, but I do really enjoy working with both. And it's not really in my plan to ever have a buyer's agent beneath me and totally ditch buyers, because I think that there's total value in working with buyers because the referral basis, and then also like chances are they're going to sell that home at some point and you want to be the person they call.
Right. So when you are, with your education that you're doing and all that, are you finding people that, kind of come across some of your stuff talking about how good of a time it is to sell and that maybe weren't exactly thinking about it or maybe had expired a while back and just hadn't, thought about it? But
yeah, kind of. I think most people, especially just given this market, were surprised at how much they could sell their home for in most cases. That was a lot of the feedback I got. A lot of people reaching out, like when I post for like my free buyer and seller guides. That's something I like to do because I get so many people that reach out every single time. It can seem really like redundant, I guess, and I post it over and over and over again, but more and more people reach out every time. So that's why I do that so often. But then also when I do that, I capture their email so that I'm able to enter that into my database and then have that for the future. So most people like do really enjoy the educational content or didn't understand like what an appraisal was or how much their home's worth, or that like they don't need to have an appraisal done before they list their home because it's going to happen again. So I just try to focus on the little things like that. I don't want to go too far in detail. I don't want to be boring. I want it to be valuable content that they can understand and actually use.
Right. And I like what you said there about, not worrying about posting it over and over again, right? Mm-hmm. Because you might have 100,000 followers, but they're not all there at the same time.
No, exactly. So many different people see it every time that you post it. And so many different people, they might see it every time you post it, but they might not have felt comfortable reaching out the first, second, third time you posted it. So it happens all the time. Like they get more comfortable, and that's just like the beautiful thing about social media is just putting yourself out there so people get to know you and they get to feel more comfortable. So then they feel better by the time they reach out, or they feel like that they have that relationship already by the time it's time for them to buy or sell.
Right. Now you said you grew up in the area that you're at. So, having that sphere of influence that you were able to kind of tap into, tell me a little bit about that, being able to jumpstart your career in real estate.
Yeah. So, I grew up in a small town and area, so there are a ton of agents around here. So my marketing helps in that way because there's probably like 2 other agents. I went to a very small school, graduated, and our high school class was only about like 26 people. Oh. And there's like 2 other agents, let alone from my high school class. So it's like, even though I have this sphere of influence, still using marketing and social media helps me set myself apart compared to the many other agents that plenty of people in my sphere could know. They know that I focus heavily on marketing and that I'm going to market their home to the extreme, and I'm going to do the best compared to anyone in our area. So tapping into my spheres helped a lot, just between relationships growing up, through my family's relationships. And then I also teach at a Pilates studio. And that has been something that I have gotten so much more business and so many more referrals than I could have ever imagined. So that's something that I was really surprised by, but I really enjoy it. And it's just about creating those relationships. Like no matter who I talk to, like when I'm at the grocery store or at the Pilates studio, just like being kind and being a person and building that relationship, like pays you back tenfold. It's just crazy. So like using my sphere, using social media, and then just meeting new people and making relationships has really helped me a lot.
Right. Absolutely. I think having, finding those opportunities to meet people, and by doing the Pilates studio, I think that's a huge one. I think of my son's involved in baseball here. Exactly. And the people, you're around the same people over and over again, and all their people that they know. And it really does kind of build out your sphere pretty quickly. It doesn't take long.
And it doesn't mean that like there's not going to be another baseball dad or soccer dad or anything that like they don't know, like another agent. It's the same thing with like the country club here. There's like probably 50 agents that have memberships at the country club, and they all think they have the country club nailed down. But no, because there's so many agents out there. But it's about building relationships, like authentic relationships with people, not just for business. Like just be a person, be a good human, and people will remember you when the time comes for business. But you have to be a person, you have to be a human, and not just a robotic real estate agent.
Right. Moving on to you talked about the marketing that you do for your the sellers and things. What are you doing to separate yourself as that, that person that's going to market a person's home to get the most for it?
Yeah. So I really use Facebook and Instagram a ton. I have the best photographer, and I'm not just saying that, like his photos, like the lighting and everything just cannot compare like to many of the other photographers. I think photos make a huge difference when it comes to listings, even when there's professional photographers and it's like from a funky angle or the lighting's off, like it really makes a big difference. So photos, I do the Matterport tours, like the 3D tours. If I have time and if it works for my sellers, then I do my marketing videos for those too. It is a little bit more of a lead time, about a week to get that done. So in some cases I do, some cases I don't. But in this market, pretty much everything has been selling regardless. So it hasn't like really given us the time to even wait for the marketing videos to come back. And then when it comes to Facebook and Instagram, post it a few times. I boost it. I put it on a highlight on Instagram. Now we don't have the swipe ups anymore, but I put the links and all of that good stuff. And then sometimes I'll put like question boxes if anyone has questions about those from there. So boosting it gets it out a little bit, but really just putting it out on social media, since I have like a large following on Instagram. And I don't just have like buyers and sellers following me. I have a ton of agents also. So that's really helpful. So if they have any clients in mind, or even if it's an out of state agent and they like have someone moving into state, like there's so many different ways that it can connect with people on social media.
Yeah, I like that about, having the relationships with other agents on social media. I think sometimes people are like, oh, I don't want you following my stuff because you don't, we're competing. But that's such an antiquated thought.
It's crazy. And I think that it's changed. I think some people definitely still feel that way, but I think that it's gotten to be more that community versus competition mentality. Thank goodness. Because before it was that way. Like you didn't want agents following you. Like you didn't want to create relationships with agents. It was all competition, even if they were like all the way in a different state. I get why people felt that way, but I'm glad that it's changing because again, the community over competition aspect and reaching out. I have agents from different states reach out all the time. Like, how would you handle this situation? Or how would you market this property? Or how would you deal with this seller and different things like that? And then in turn, building those referral relationships. That's an extended arm that is barely any work on your end that you can get paid for. So it's like a different stream of income, which is important to kind of tap into if you can. So I think that it's getting to be more common. People are opening their eyes to that a little bit more. And hopefully it continues to grow in that way compared to only wanting your things to yourself, not wanting to help any other agents. There's plenty of business out there for everyone. And we should be excited about others' success because that's what you would want in turn.
And, you talk about, just being a human and being a good person. And, honestly, it's a lot easier, to be that way.
Exactly.
And then it doesn't cost anything for you to have a good relationship with somebody, but that referral that they send could make you a lot of money. And,
exactly. Definitely.
The return is...
Exactly. The turnover is crazy. And it just pays in turn. And you don't have to put in much effort to be a good person, respond to a message, drop a clapping emoji on someone's just sold post. You don't have to do a lot, but it makes a really big difference and it makes you look like a bigger person in the long run. So it builds those relationships that are very important in the industry that we're in.
Right. One of the things I noticed on your page here recently was it was was it a buyer or a seller that just got, a proposal on there?
Yes, so that was so much fun. I've been wanting to do that for so long. That was a dream. So she and I were friends, through my sphere of influence. I didn't know her personally, friend on friend, but we had many mutual friends and we just clicked. So I brag about this all the time. She won a game show. So she won a game show last year. That's where she got the funds to buy her new home. So it was so much fun. So she's building new construction. And for my new construction clients, I like to have framing photos done of them in the framework of their houses. It just turns into more content for me to post. So that's why I enjoy it. But when we were going to get the framework photos done, the photographer reached out to me and she's like, hey, the boyfriend said he wants to take this photo with a ring. And I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? Is he proposing? I was so excited. So what he wanted to do was hide behind her with the ring, in his hand. And he was planning to propose a few weeks later. So we were able to do the photo behind her. But then when I sent her all the photos, she said oh, I'm missing the ones of Alex standing behind me. I know he was back there. So I was freaking out that she knew about it, but luckily she just thought he was doing something. So then this week, her sister and Alec reached out and they asked me to call her frantically that she needed to get to the new construction site ASAP. And they went over there and he had this full setup and they had a photographer and all that stuff. And she sent me this video of her being like, is BryAnn here? She was looking around. It was so funny, but I loved it. Being able to be a part of that, it just felt so special to me. And I felt honored in a way. I'm a real estate agent. I shouldn't be involved in that, I guess. It made me feel really special and something that I'll always look back on. Right. And I would love to do it again for sure.
Right. Well, but I think that just also goes to, by being involved in making these, making the experience as good as you do for all of your clients, it kind of, it shows that, in that 5-7 years down the road, when they're looking, they're going to remember that you were part of that and they're going to come back to you. So I think, again, just by creating that experience for everybody, you really are building your future pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some people might not even see it that way, but it's true. And then, if you get into the nitty gritty of it, then she's posting photos and I'm commenting. Then it's like branding myself and marketing myself like a little bit more. It's just getting yourself out there. But fun situations like that, like you just make the best of it. So it was really fun. And yeah, it's just another way of branding and marketing, which is really cool.
Right. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me this morning.
Of course. Thank you so much for asking me. It was really fun. I appreciate it.
I want to thank BryAnn for joining us today. And I really agree that creating a personal identity in the real estate industry is vitally important to your business growth. So once again, if you think you or somebody else on your team has an awesome story or a tip to share with our community, send us a message at feedback@smartagents.com. Well, that wraps things up for this episode. But remember, follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts and make sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents YouTube channel. Again, I'm Michael Walter, and we'll see you on the next episode.